Let's bring in Yahoo Finance Editor-in-Chief Andy Serwer now to talk more about this deal, another big shakeup in the media space. Andy, let's kind of begin this way. You worked at Time Warner, the former Time Warner, for a long time. You've seen a number of cycles of media combinations, breakups, coming back together. What does this latest deal say to you about kind of the state of play with the endless game of musical chairs in the big media space?
Yeah, that's right, Miles. And putting together content and distribution has become a sport, if you will, for bankers and CEOs in the media and distribution space, if you will. And, you know, I go all the way back to when Time with AOL. And remember, AOL was a distribution platform, essentially. And that was put together in 2000 as the biggest media company on the planet. And the bankers at Morgan Stanley helped put that deal together, and then in the ensuing decade or so helped take it apart. So the bankers kind of make out here. And it's curious to me why these companies continue to try to do this. I should mention, of course, our parent company, Verizon, bought AOL and Yahoo, and just past week or so has decided to offload that as well to Apollo. So it's interesting that both of the largest telco companies in the United States got into the media realm and then just got out at exactly the same time. And it reminds me of the old adage, you guys, that if you want milk, you don't necessarily need to buy a cow, right? In other words, you can do a lot of deals with media companies if you're a distribution company. Why you would buy them, it's unclear to me, though there is one success story to point to in this space.
And that would what, be Comcast?
Exactly. And you know, it's curious, Julie, why that is. And I think you can point to a few things. First of all, Patient Capital. And that company is sort of controlled by the Roberts family, right? And I think that they've really given this a lot more time to work out, and they have a lot more say over how the companies are integrated or not, and have really worked very hard at sort of grinding down the fiefdoms that are typical in media properties.
Well, and I guess that sort of raises the question, you know, with the one success story, the one notable success story, I mean, can we sort of make the blanket statement that vertical media deals are in general a bad idea? I don't know if that's going to dissuade the telecom companies from making them in the future, though.
I think you're right. But, you know, these bankers do a very good job of convincing CEOs and stroking their egos to do these deals. And let's face it, I mean, on the face of it, there is some, you know, compelling reasons to do this. It sort of makes sense. So you've got these pipes and they need to be filled, and the best way to fill them is if you fill them yourself. But I remember, Julie, going all the way back to the Time Warner deal. And this was when Time merged with Warner, for instance. And back in, that was 1990. I was around for that deal as well. And the people from the movie studio came back east and were talking to us at the Humble Magazine Company at that point. And they said, well, when we release a movie in Hollywood, that means you people at Time Magazine will write a nice review about the movie. And the people at the magazine were mortified. They say, well, that's not how it works. And then the movie studio goes, and I remember this vividly, he goes, then why are we doing this deal? Right? And that goes back to the cow and the milk thing. You can do relationships, but you don't have to own them. In fact, it might not be optimal to own them.
Andy, the companies are putting out some very lofty financial projections. By 2023, they're projecting $52 billion in sales and $14 billion in EBITDA. How is Discovery going to drive value from this deal?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're sort of looking forward a little bit. And, you know, as Miles noted, Brian, that stock, Discovery, is up a lot. Discovery, what an interesting company. Of course, it's been through the ringer, you know, with the sell-off from that hedge fund earlier in the year. And David Zaslav, who's going to be running this thing, has always sort of been like a second-tier media mogul. He's going to kill me for saying that. But David, you know, I think that's kind of the case. Although I would say that this deal kind of elevates you into the top realm, so that when you go to the Allen and Company Mogul Fest next time around, you will be kind of a kingpin there at the very top level, although Discovery's been a very successful company. So to answer your question, Brian, there's going to be a lot of cost savings. That company Discovery also is very good at driving value and driving brand awareness across all those cable channels that it owns. They've been very, very successful. They've been masters at marketing and also tapping into what people want, particularly young audiences. They're very popular with younger people, which is obviously incredibly important.
You know, Andy, I think us all being in the media space, we could probably go on this deal all day. But you brought up an interesting point that I do want to, double click on, which is the idea of the mogul here and the big players that are involved, right? John Malone has a large stake in Discovery, of course, and I think Advanced Publications is kind of part of that holdco that's involved with the Discovery ownership stake. But, Zaslav comes from, I guess I would say a different era, an aging era within the media space. And I think a key player here that there are questions around, I don't know if we're going to know the answer today, but what happens to Jeff Zucker? Because CNN, I mean, he had been planned, I think, to leave at the end of this year, but CNN is really the crown jewel within the live Warnermedia space, if we want to sort of call it that. And I think there's just a lot of questions about where all the different players go here, especially since current Warnermedia CEO Jason Kilar not mentioned once in the press release, which I think you and I both know that means he is on his way out.
Yeah, I mean, he'll probably be running Jason Kilar, that is probably running it for a year or so, and then, be sort of shown the door, I would speculate. Jeff Zucker, really interesting point there as well. Has a relationship with Zaslav, so that's a possibility. But, CNN's kind of the odd man out. I mean, it doesn't fit with sort of the Discovery channels that have become so famous and popular. So, there's already been speculation there that would go to another owner potentially, maybe not right away, but at some point. So that's interesting. And then other personalities, John Stankey, wow, how about him, coming in? And remember, he ran Warner Communications under Randall Stevenson at AT&T. Then when he's become the CEO, he's unwound not only the Warner Communications deal, but the satellite deal as well. So, talk about taking over from your predecessor, your mentor, and then undoing the damage, if you will, that he did. Now, AT&T stock, even with those two deals, has really gone nowhere over the past 12 months. And you can say the same thing about Verizon. Unloading Yahoo AOL, that stock has not really moved much on that news. And both of these unloadings, if you will, were pretty widely anticipated, I guess. So maybe it was already priced in.
There is another stock that's moving this morning, and that's Netflix, which is moving down. And I saw a few media journalists and analysts mention this morning that on the call discussing the deal, it sounds like the combined spending plans of this new entity on programming is going to be around $20 billion. And a lot of folks pointing out that compares with around 17, I believe, for Netflix. So are we talking about finally a real competitor, more of a competitor?
Yeah, and also remember, Julie, that they have underpriced Netflix, and Zaslav was very adamant about that point a couple months ago when he was sort of rolling out their premium offering. So I think you've got a well-funded competitor and an aggressive competitor. And I just think the number and scale of competitors is starting to make people question Netflix's position. I would not underestimate Reed Hastings. He's seen these things before. The death of Reed Hastings has been called before, remember. But it's not getting any easier, with Disney and Peacock and all the rest. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how much programming this new media giant does start to fund. And that is a pretty big war chest, though. You're right.
All right. Andy Serwer, you're going to be talking to John Stankey and David Zaslav later today here on Yahoo Finance Live, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We expect that conversation to take place. Andy, thanks so much for stopping by this morning. And I know we'll talk later on as details emerge.